Hey, everybody, welcome to another podcast. Today I am flying solo, so we went off of our calendar, and I'm doing this earlier in the morning on Wednesday just because it's me. Sean Ennis is on vacation, and Dave Darby as well. So, what we want to talk about today is I wanted to give you guys a kind of a quicker podcast, but I wanted to focus on Copilot, and I wanted to focus specifically on prompting for beginners. I want you to get the most out of Copilot in your business if you're using it, or you could use this with ChatGPT if you use Poe.com or any of the internal systems that you install on your machine. Could be LM Studio, Olama. Anyway, the list is endless as far as all of this is concerned. So I am going to switch the screen to give you a larger view of the presentation that we're going to go through today here. And to start off, let's talk about essentially what you'll learn. So we'll talk about AI Builder and Power Automate because this is part of the Microsoft ecosystem, but we're going to mainly focus on and demo Copilot today. Essentially, though, irregardless of the platform and the system, I want you to talk about or look at unlocking the power of prompts and prompt engineering. I want you to talk about or think about rather enhancing the language model interactions. What that means is I want you to think about what it is that you're trying to get out of this large language model that sits behind, because that's really honestly what drives all these things behind the scenes. And as a user, you just need to know how to speak plain English to it and get the most out of it. And that's what we're really going to focus on covering today. The other thing is, at the end of the day, you want to foster better communications, either with your colleagues inside the walls. You also want to consider and think about how you can make your marketing and or emails or anything that you have customer facing better. Now, you need to also consider, strongly consider, I'll add, making sure that there is and I coined this term, human centricity, that there's a human in the middle between you and AI and what goes out into the ether, whether that's inside the walls or whether it's publicly. So the other thing to also consider is I want you to get hands-on practical experience. And that's why I chose Copilot, because it's free, it's easy to access, and for the most part, you don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to sign up for an account. The other thing, too, is at the end of the day, we all should think about driving technological advancements. And while there's a lot of negative stigma on generative AI, and I get it, I understand it, but there's also some really good things about it, too. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they would say, or as some of us would say. And at the end of the day, I think that if you just completely disregard all of it, that you might be missing out on some key aspects that could help you in your day-to-day. Okay, so today's agenda, we're going to talk about fundamentals of prompting, techniques, and then explore different strategies for this type of stuff. Okay, first, let's get into some of the fundamentals. At the end of the day, you really want to focus on the outcome of who, what, where, why, and when, okay? This is the basic fundamentals for prompting. You should always include 2 of these 5 if you expect AI to give you anything decent, okay? Let me give you an example of a prompt. Write a short story about a young detective solving a mysterious crime in a small town. Very, very short prompt. However, let's break this down. Write a short story. That's the what about a young detective who solving a mysterious crime, what, in a small town, where. So we have 4 of those 5. Very short, very concise, but it nails that as far as what you're looking for the outcome. So you're going to get a pretty decent short story, and you're going to have guided it in a very narrow and specific path. And that is key. That is important. If you look at anything that I'm about to talk about today and see the pink highlighted text there, it is context is king. You need to be able to provide the context. AI is so smart because it's been trained pretty much on everything on the internet and everything in private systems, plus what's on the internet, that it's so smart, it's actually stupid. And unless you give it a very narrow road or path, you're going to get all kinds of weird hallucinations or weird outcomes. So I want you to think about that as you go through prompting. So here we got several other of these prompts. I don't want to go through each one of them because we've got a lot of content to cover, but if you want to, go ahead and take a screenshot of this. If you're watching the video, pause the video, take a screenshot. And from that point, we'll move on to the next block. So all of this is cumulative. This isn't reductive and then use this or this. I mean, it could be use this or this in some use cases, but that previous screen, I want you to use as the baseline format. Okay. Now, in addition to that, consider this. I want you to, use all of that, but you can also now control the length of the output. And here we're saying write a concise summary. So that's vague, right? That's better. That is something that you can use to help control the length of the output. It'll be more of a summary as opposed to a full-blown whatever. The next one, we're going to say, keeping it no more than 4 sentences. That is your controlling of the length there. This is a very specific 280 character example. This is a single paragraph example, and this is a maximum of 200 words. So if you want to control the output, include this in addition to your who, what, where, why, when. Oh, the other thing too is there is the hashtag or text or texting shortcut. TLDR stands for too long didn't read. Instead of saying write me a summary of blah 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 blah, right? You just put in whatever it is and then do TLDR. It'll give you the same output. It's a shortcut. So use that as you see fit. Here is another example that is in addition to. Now we're getting to the point where we could include this in some of the other examples. Again, always using who, what, where, why, when is your base. And then I want you to consider the following. Okay, this is more of a maybe if you're not going to control the length, or maybe this one. So in an iterative refinement addressing ethical concerns, this is an example. This is generate a short story about a scientist who invents groundbreaking technology that can manipulate people's thoughts. Interesting. As you write, ensure that the story explores the ethical dilemmas and consequences of such technology. Iterate on this story to highlight the potential dangers and ethical considerations. So we've got dangers, ethical considerations within this short story. So that's the framing, right? But then the iterative part comes from the part of saying, what are the potential dangers and ethical considerations? This is really, really important because this is the key that kind of triggers it to iterate through back and forth, and it's addressing all of the ethical considerations. So essentially behind the scenes, generative AI is going to juxtapose these two concepts and ideas, create a bulleted list in memory, and then it's going to go back and forth, bounce, and it's going to write out all of that information for you. So whether that was too much information for you or not, that remains to be seen for you as an individual, but consider this in the event that your writings need to consider some sort of iterative. This is focused on ethical considerations, but it could be just anything that you want to iterate and kind of consider in your writing. All right, the next one, these are additional prompts. Again, if you're watching on a video, on a replay, go ahead, pause the video, take a screenshot. Otherwise, take your screenshot now. We'll be moving on. Okay, now we're into phase 2 or step 2. This is technique for crafting effective prompts. So again, this is stacking on everything else that you've learned. Now we're going to talk about clear and specific prompts. This is a really great one. I do like this one. So I'm actually going to try to, let me come over here and I'll see if I can grab this from another area of where I'm at right here. What I'm trying to do is I want to copy this out. And what I want to do is I want to pop into Copilot. I want you to see actually what's going to happen here, okay? So it's one thing to talk about it, but I want you to see it in action. And this is the interactive part. I want you to go to Copilot. So open up Edge. And when you do open up Edge, if you click here in the top right corner, you'll see the Copilot. If you click that or hover over it even, you got this little thing right here that you can click and it'll make it into a full screen. Okay, so that's how you can get to Copilot if you want to see how I've gotten here. And so I'm simply pasting in, write a step-by-step guide on how to bake chocolate chip cookies. And so this is covering the clear and specific aspect of what it is that I'm trying to show you. So here we have these instructions, but I want you to see the output. So I've said step-by-step instructions, and I want you to consider the step-by-step instructions in regards to measurements, ingredients, and baking instructions. And of course, this morning, Copilot decides it wants to take a nap, so we may have to wait just a few moments. If this decides to choke, I will pop up. There we go. So here we got a list of ingredients. Now this is the step-by-step part. So that's the key in using clear and specific, right? You're saying, what do you want it to do? Additionally, for those of you watching this podcast and you're a programmer, one of the things that you can do and control very nicely, which I do love this, is to break maybe the ingredients down into an array or give it to me in JSON format. With key value pair and making sure that I have ingredients as the key value pair. And then the instructions is also a key value pair. We've got nested arrays and all that other stuff in there. But the point in doing that and controlling that in your output, you can control that in really cool and interesting ways to use programmatically in your application. So if you're on the business side, you don't need any of that. But the point here is to use clear and specific or concise type of prompts. Here's a couple more of these prompts for you. So go ahead and take a screenshot or pause the video now. And these are other examples for you to use. All right, moving on. Now we're going to talk about tone and purpose. So write a friendly email. Okay, so just including that little bit of tone helps to help this out. The purpose is make an email engaging and relatable, right? Okay. And so we're also saying here, use an informal tone. So we're calling out the keyword tone to make sure. So the tone setting here is going to be friendly and informal. So this also has a purpose that's, I would say, somewhat ambiguous, but maintain a professional tone and emphasize, now here's the purpose, the profitability and growth of the potential venture. Okay, so you can kind of see the examples going through here. So again, we're stacking on different types of tips and tricks for you to use and to bring about really good prompt to help you create not only these better prompts, but to get better output and results in your writing. The whole goal here is, guys, you want to be able to use the Pareto principle, which is our 80-20 rule. And what you want to do is make sure that all of your heavy lifting, the monotonous stuff that you don't like doing, is done by the AI. You just want to go in and polish and clean or restructure. And in the worst of the worst case scenario, even if all of it is trash, it may just spark an idea to help you move along a particular path or way. Hey, I didn't think of that. And so that is a huge time saver rather than sitting for days, hours, whatever it may be, trying to come up with the next idea to do and use and whatever. Okay, we're moving on into element and techniques. So write a short story incorporating the elements of a mystery. So think about that as a human being, just the elements of a mystery, right? And so each of us are going to come up with different things. So you're not going to get a very deterministic output here. What you are going to get is a lot of variability each time you run this prompt even. So just do expect that because it's ambiguous, but yet it is telling you, I want you to think about the elements or the parts of, you could substitute that word, elements, with parts of a mystery, okay? So just think about when you want the AI to focus on something, but yet kind of break it down or unpack it, so to speak, right? And so here is another example using poetry. Now, this is an ABA rhyming scheme, okay? So that's a technique within poetry. So we're talking about a particular technique, but then we're guiding it even further, saying to capture the essence of a serene and natural landscape. So we'll have that part included, or this is essentially what the poem would be about using that particular scheme. All right, so here are some other examples. Whoops, go ahead and screenshot that. All right, so we're going to move on to the next piece. So we're going through this pretty quickly. We actually have 2 more slides to show you, and then I'll give you a bonus here at the end. I'm going to include for you guys something called what I call my magic prompt. So here is exploring the different prompting strategies. I'm going to pop all of these up on screen. Again, go ahead and screenshot this as you'd like. And notice on screen we have several variations. This time it's not all within a particular area. We're talking mainly, the main point of the slide is to give you some contextual ideas about, context is king. And these are the different outputs of what it is that you're doing. We've got an instruction prompt, a contextual prompt. We've got completion prompts, question-based, and then, of course, your typical ChatGPT/Copilot, which is a multi-turn conversation between you and the AI. Okay, so these are other examples for differentiating prompts. So when you're going ahead and trying to figure out when you use generative AI, think about when you put on a different hat, a different role. You may have one title, but you have different roles that you fulfill through the day. Sometimes it's answering internal emails. Sometimes you're hiring positions for your department or maybe interviewing. If you're just regular worker, you may be responding to customers, you may be responding to your supervisor, and you may have expanded responsibilities in running meetings or whatever it may be. But the point is, most of us have multiple hats. Now, if you're working, say, as a conversational agent, chat agent or something, talking or chatting on the telephone, and that's all you do is just telephone-based support or chat-based support, you pretty much do all of that. But at some point, that might be your main hat. You probably need to summarize information and context. You probably need to report to your supervisor. You may be really good at your job and you might have a promotion, or you might be a team lead. And in that case, and even in that, you're going to have 2-3 different hats. So you could take different types of prompts to adjust to those hats or those roles, and then create them as templates, and then just keep them in like a little prompt library. All right. So this is the part that I want to get to, was showing you AI Builder, because you can build prompt libraries. So if you are a Microsoft client on Microsoft Office 365, and you have Power Platform licensing, this is a great place to go and build your prompt libraries. So last slide before we get to that, this is talking about the impact of variations in the response. So this is writing a poem about love and then writing a poem about heartbreak. Okay, here is other prompt variations, but here's a really important takeaway. Okay, so Albert Mehrabian's 738-55 rule is basically breaking down communication on how us as human beings understand language. So 7% of it, what you say really doesn't much matter. How you say it, the tone, the voice that you use in delivery, and 55% of the understanding comes from body language. This is why many supervisors or old school supervisors or people in the business much prefer that when you're having meetings with colleagues that you go on camera. So if you're ever wondering why do I have to go on camera, right? It's because people want to understand. People that are people, I'm trying to think of the right word to say. People that are people persons, or whatever the point is, like sales folks, right? They rely on that feedback. They need that 55% of the communication, because how they approach the next objective or things of that, they read the body language incredibly well. And so this is what makes them good in sales. They're able to kind of figure out where the person is at, where they're thinking, are there objections coming when they're talking, what is the facial, what is the body language of the customer, how is that information being received. So it's not like the customer's not saying a word, but it means a lot. And so when you're talking about even just running business meetings, if you're a supervisor running the meeting and everybody's like, right, that you can't see that on camera. Though the other thing too is that if you're on camera, you can't be like doing 10,000 things and your supervisor's, hey, are you listening to what I'm telling you? That might be the other reason. So again, 55% of the body language. So why am I going on this rant? This rant is really about generative AI. And so you lose body language completely. That's 55% of the communication. So what takes the place? It is tone and it is the words. So words does have a higher increase because it's a computer. It's cold. It's just using logic and algorithms. But the tone in which you write your prompt is huge. Okay. So one of the reasons I should and could break tone down a little bit further, I want to add something for this. Tone as well as emotion. So you can use emotional evoking words in your speech or in your conversation to help kind of guide or provide a better tone. And so, if you're very matter of fact and very short and to the point type of person, you're going to struggle with this. So this is something you're going to have to increase your skills on when dealing with AI, because tone and emotion is going to be huge in your writing or in your prompting to generative AI to get a really good output. So anyway, with that in mind, I wanted to quickly end by showing you guys Copilot, and I want to, not Copilot, sorry, Power Automate. And I'm trying to find my shortcut link. It should be up here somewhere. Actually, it's not in this browser. I think I have it over here. I'm on Chrome. Let me grab a tab, tear it over here. Let's get rid of this. Let's go over to Power Automate. Okay, so for those of you that have never used or been in Power Automate, you can go to make.powerautomate.com. And I'm not going to go into a huge rampage on this because I know a lot of folks watching this are in the business, but just know that if you have technical or more technical minded people, that this is available for them to build. I'm going to keep it light. So when you go into a flow, and I'm not even going to go into that much of the flow. Let's just go into an instant cloud flow, and we'll do a manually triggered flow. This is the canvas from which you can build, right? And here you can add an action and you can choose AI Builder, and there's a bunch of stuff, okay? So AI Builder in and of itself has all of this power. Imagine in your business, if you're a business owner, a business operator, again, I don't want you to think about or get wrapped up in the fact that this is a technical piece of software. I want you to read the sentences here so you know the capabilities so you can delegate this to other folks. Now, if you are technical and you are watching, just know that this is what you can use in your flows. So we can analyze sentiment analysis of text. You can do classification. This would be great if you're doing help desk tickets or things that you receive in bulk, maybe surveys, things of that nature. You can classify that, or think about that as surveys. You could classify and use sentiment analysis. And the point is, as you get this information, you can start to build over time a timeline, a history, a historical, information. Hey, how are our surveys trending? What is the general sentiment analysis of people that's giving us feedback? Now, there is a rule that says typically people don't have anything nice to say unless they want to complain about something. So don't expect and don't use this analytical insight as some red flag alarm to go send your team off into a tizzy because you're all nilly-willy and nervous about the fact that, hey, 87% of our feedback is negative. Well, that's because people like to complain. They usually, if everything's good, they don't want to go out of their way. But if you've made them highly upset, they're going to have a lot to say. So be careful when you're using sentiment analysis, and then you're using the analysis to drive business decisions. Okay, so you got to look at that very, very carefully in that area. Anyway, so there's all these other things. This is your typical Chat GPT-like experience, create text with GPT prompt. I will warn you that this is less than stellar. It's overly sensitive. It tries to protect your company and organization, but at the same time, it flat out either refuses or it doesn't quite work well. There's other options or better ways of doing it, but nonetheless, it is there for you to use. This is $500 a month for credit, but if you have the Power Platform licensing, you get builder credits that come along for the ride with the license. So why not use them? It's up to you to decide if you need to add extra capacity for the month. But if you're getting value out of it, you need to evaluate your total cost of ownership, as well as, what's the return on investment for that. And you can do that quite easily. There's a calculator for AI Builder credits. If you're interested, reach out to me via LinkedIn. I can kind of help walk you through some of that. Anyway, there's all this other stuff out here, but the point is I wanted to show you about the prompting library. So that's how you build a flow. Well, this is where you build your library. So if you click on AI Hub over here, this will take you into the relatively newer interface. And if you're not seeing it, click on more. You'll find AI Hub in the more list, and you can pin it, which then makes it more accessible to outside. Now, the takeaway is this big block right here, prompts. If you click on prompts, this gives you all different pre-canned templated prompts. You could also create your own custom prompt. So under my prompt, you have this item here that is a particular prompt that you already have in the can and ready to go. Typically, you can create a GPT-like prompt. So I'll click that here. This is where you give it the name, right? And then you put your prompt in here. And the whole point of telling you this is that this is allowing you to put a placeholder. I'm going to call it placeholder, but you'd give it a name, right? And then you can put sample information of what data this is going to be so that you can actually come down here and test it with this test button. But the point is, as you're writing, here is my about, and then we can insert that placeholder, right? This makes your prompt dynamic. I want you to think about that. I want you to think about if you have a prompt that works really good, but your scenario for this part of the prompt changes dynamically, you can use Power Automate in this prompting library to build a really cool set of prompts. Now, this feeds into an automation component, and that's really the final note that I want to end on. When you consider Power Automate within the Power Platform, you can use this in your business, generative AI in your business, at different sections or intersections within your workflow. So if you haven't already discovered what it is your business process is and you don't have it documented, now is the time. You're moving into this state of digital transformation that's unheard of. If you have your business processes undocumented, you really, really need to get that done today. The reason for that is inevitably you're going to need to move into some sort of automation component if you haven't already. And if you outsource that to a third-party vendor or even delegate it internally inside the walls, if you don't have your ducks in a row and understand visually what is happening in your business, you're going to have a tremendous expense and a discovery of trying to help you build that. So you can save a lot of money by simply going through, talking to your subject matter experts within whatever process that runs inside your business. And if you do that well, as a CEO, as a COO, you can start putting all of these together and chaining them, and you'll get a really good understanding of how your business works. This will give you an opportunity to find out where things are gummed up in your business, how to improve certain areas, allocate budgets to places that are gummed up. It'll give you a really great insight. Anyway, I can walk you guys through all of that. If you're interested, reach out to me via LinkedIn. Anyway, I'm all alone in today's podcast, so thank you very, very much for joining me today. I do understand that this is a little bit longer and I didn't have anybody to bounce anything else off of today. But again, do appreciate your time in stopping by. So this is it for this week's video. We'll